Hey y'all, this is your girl BMORE and welcome to the Dummies Cauldron.
Hey guys, and this is your girl BMORE, and today we are going to talk about this new moon starting in Gemini. So today, and actually in like a few hours, we will be experiencing the new moon in Gemini, really around 11 something p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So this new moon is very interesting. It gives a it gives a lot of things. Although we don't have any harsh aspects to the sun and moon at all, but still the placements are very interesting and delicate, and I'm going to say that just outright. Like, the best I can say is trouble in paradise. Because there is a although there is ease going on here, there is a level of, one could argue, nonsensicalness that, if left unchecked, we lose everything. We don't we lose a lot of things. It's very painful. Sometimes for some people it can show up as like illnesses, sickness, loss. You know, it is unnecessary struggle, if I can be quite frank. Um these stars are going to occur this new moon is going to occur in Hyadum, the Pleiades. Let me see. Hyadum, the Pleiades. We still have some kind of some hangovers with Algol, which is Medusa. Ophiuchus kind of shows up, which is the serpent bearer. Okay, those are like the main ones. Let me just see if I have any more. Yeah, so we also have the North Star, Polaris. We are starting to move out of Orion. Well, yeah, we're moving systematically out of Orion, but we're starting to get into the bears. So the Big Dipper, Little Dipper, stuff like that. Those are called the bears. And I think in a separate recording, I'll be talking about the mythology and the stars and how they are going to um translate into this new moon. And I think that's just going to be separate, and I'll probably be for Patreon, so y'all get over there. But I think that's going to be very separate because it's very important that we understand the stories and the mythos that kind of go with what is happening. I notice, in my personal opinion, that sometimes would be the issue with tropical astrology versus like sidereal, because they kind of keep the energy the same. Like, they tell the stories with they kind of make it like a whole package deal. I would kind of say like maybe sidereal is like Apple and tropical is like Android. You got to piece everything together, or like if you don't have anyone that makes like that's going to put it together for you, you're going to have to learn it yourself. But these are very interesting stars and constellations because these are stars that can lead to the idea of like aggression, leadership, heartbreak, and mainly because people are losing their way. This also shows up in the nakshatra Kritika. And although Kritika can be very spiritual at best, the problem with Kritika is that it doesn't understand. There's a lack of intention, and I guess that's the best we can say. There's a lack of development and intention, so we can move into destructive forces very quickly. And that will be the same for this too, because these constellations, same as with Vedic nakshatras, these lead to unintentional destruction due to a lack of intentionality, or like mindfulness, consciousness. Y'all see what the theme is. So there's like a lack of, things are just kind of going, coming and going, and it's like, what the f, and that's just kind of how I feel looking at it. It's like things coming and going, what the f. And unfortunately, sometimes people can be hurt. Sometimes people can lose things by way of being so cavalier or like reckless, and there's a lack of intentionalist. And one called intentionality or mindfulness or those type of words. That's the best way I can say it, y'all. Like, that's the best way I can say it. And my number one rule for everyone is this: it doesn't even have that many harsh aspects. Like, if you look over here and you see this is the new moon, and you look in the sixth house in this sign Gemini over here, go to 6 and you see all them planets sitting up right there. It doesn't have that many harsh lines coming out. It's all blue, okay? But the point is, it's like, even though there's ease coming out of it, there's still shenanigans over there. And the best thing I would tell y'all, just off rip before we start like really digging, again, I will go into the other stars and stuff like that, constellations, and that'll probably be a separate thing, and I'll just do that for Patreon. I kind of make it like a little podcast. But the best thing I would tell y'all, be mindful. Like, stop letting life happen by chance. Do y'all get what I'm saying? Hopefully you do. Like, whatever you don't do every day or what is not intentional, you're putting it up to chance. And if it's that important to you, you need to get it together. And that is the best thing I can say to y'all. Y'all want to have a good month? This is what you want to do. You want to wake up. You want to think about what your desires are. You want to think about, is it a desire or is it something that we can propel past a desire? Is it possible? What are my limitations? If it's not possible, then that's one thing. We're going to start looking about what is possible for me to achieve and and the restrictions that I have now. You're going to also think about what resources you have. What do I have working for me? What do I have to lose? And then after you do that, you're going to start crafting plans to be intentional about what you want. Because anything you're not intentional about, then it's not that big of a deal. It's either that or lower your expectations. That's why this is going to be called Trouble in Paradise. We have to lower our expectations then. We're not being realistic then. It's not that serious. I promise you, it's not that serious. Now, if you can do those things and you understand what your limitations are and you want to use this energy to like lock into some things, then lock in. Like, actually sit down, get organized, figure out what you want to do. You want to lose 10 pounds? Figure it out. What foods do you like to eat? What you don't like to eat? Within the restrictions you need. What exercises that I more than likely are able to do or would be interested in doing repetitively. You have to be realistic. Okay? Because there's a lot of, you already have a lot of placements where people can be dumb, and I'm not trying to be rude. Like, people can be really dumb. Like, not even like, what's up, dummy? Like, in a familiar term, because that's how we use back home in Baltimore, that we call people dummies. It's not even like, what's up? It's like, you're dumb. Or there's an anti-intelligence kind of vibe going on. I'm not even talking about that. I mean, just like aimless, mindless. Lack of foresight. Nothing makes sense. Everything but backwards. And I promise you, with some stuff, we do not have to work that hard. Some stuff is already figured out in human society, science. Like, some stuff is already figured out. We do not have to work that hard. I promise you. I promise you. Please do not be no dummy. And not in a nice term. Not in like a familiar term. Like, just dumb. Okay? See what you got working for you. And where you want to go. And even if you don't want to change nothing to like improve or nothing, just don't be silly enough to lose things that are important to you. And that is my main thing. For the whole month. The whole month. Because the new moon starts a vibe for the whole month. I would also encourage y'all to listen to the eclipses again, particularly the solar eclipse. Because this is a byproduct of that. Okay? So all of the stuff with the mythology and the fixed signs and talking about maybe how the fixed signs will impact us for this month, the constellations, the stars, I'm going to have that probably be separate. It's probably going to be like a little podcast setting. But let's talk about the behaviors of the planets. So we see the sun, the moon, Mercury, Jupiter, and Uranus is already like leaning into Gemini. Here we're going to get traits where people are clever, they're talkative, people can be emotionally versatile, but they also is like almost like a improvisational skills, like improv skills that they have to try to cover up maybe a lack of substance, or even trying to improvise with what they have already, which is positive. People are more ambitious. They like to think. It's like a strong mental power, and new moons tend to force a theme, almost internal like vision. So we're having 4 themes of Gemini kind of coming out, and so that is forceful thoughts. Also, the idea of understanding what good and evil is, because that's what Gemini is, understanding the idea of good and evil. The other thing of Gemini is also a sexual component. Gemini is a sexual component. There's a couple of constellations or zodiac signs that are outright sexual in nature. So those are a couple of things that we have to figure out. But people are impulsive now. The other thing I'll say is, when having conversations or passing around ideas, it's very important that we are not overly attached to our opinions. Opinion or the mind, particularly like Mercury, that is the conscious mind. That is only a fragment of consciousness. And the mind changes. That's why the symbol is what the symbol is. The symbol is a circle with a crescent moon at the top and a plus sign. The moon sits on top of the circle. The moon changes a lot. So we get new moons, full moons. It moves very quickly. One could argue it's the fastest planet that we have. So the mind changes. People change their mind frequently. So opinions are going to change quickly. Forms of consciousness change quickly, just as quickly as people's moods. So when we're having conversations or changing and exchanging ideas, that can change our mind. That is the essence of Mercury. The problem is if you identify too much with this certain form of consciousness, and we're not allowing the mind to change. We're not allowing the mind to change. So this is a projected chart out for 11:02 or 3 p.m. Right now, the planets are a little skewed. Like if you try to look at the current planets, I think the sun is at 3 degrees in Gemini instead of 6, or the moon is at 3 degrees in Gemini. Yeah, it's probably the moon. The sun is already at 6 degrees, and I think Mercury is still at 1 degree. So in a few hours, they'll like scoot over and they'll be locked in. But when the sun is near planets and they're very close, this is what we call under the rays or under the beams, and they get burnt up by the sun. The sun has a mild malefic behavior, so they weaken them in proximity unless a planet is friendly to each other, which is another thing, because it's a thing called planetary wars, and you can see the relationship between the planets, like who's friend, who foe, who don't like each other, why. In this case, this is just the general rule. Now, when a planet is at 0 degrees with the sun, we get into something called cazimi, or in the heart. It's in the heart of the sun, and that planet becomes purified. So when the sun and the moon are together, they are very close. That could be a prime example, like what you see with the 6 degrees sun and moon. That kind of, if you look at the sixth house, that'll be a prime example of like what you see with a planet is like in the heart of the sun. In a few days, Mercury will probably be in the heart of the sun too. So our thoughts will be purified. But it's very important that when we get that opportunity in maybe this week coming, we be open to the experience. There can also be too much activity, a lot of things with devices, paperwork, routines. Everything is so busy. Errands, calling, people calling you. So this could be a good time to come up with a bedtime routine, or what we call like sleep detox. If you look up sleep detox, it's not actually like you taking anything. It's kind of like basically being intentional with sleeping. So like you don't put any devices in your bed, you turn your devices off, or you don't look at screens past a certain point. It's good that we have the stimulation come down. I recently made a post like this week about elements and how elements shape the psychology and the behavior of planets or just aspects in general. So if we're having a new moon in Gemini and it's an air signs are very, very much so, can be overly stimulated, and they do have to have time to integrate information. They need time, as much as they can zip around and do all this stuff, they do need time to integrate information into rest. Air signs as an ascendant, or like being in the first house, you know, they do make for good physical bodies, but they do need time to decompress. They do need time to like internalize things, because it can be, like I said, overly stimulated, and they can be prone to like anxiety, nervous conditions, etc. So it's good that you guys try to plan a bedtime while we're living our intentional month. If you're having sleep problems, because again, that's not realistic, we're sticking on the in our realistic lane, making sure we're coming up with a bedtime. We detox if we need to. If you are busier than usual, which you probably will be, because the new moon is in Gemini and Mercury is here too, coupled with Uranus, you need to come up with a plan to make sure that your days run smoothly. If you're going over contracts, it's very important that you take your time when reading them. You need to review all your paperwork. This can also be a good time for interviews or promotions in your career field. But again, be practical and read between the fine lines. Now, although we are talented and creative these days, there's a strong leaning towards having leadership skills, which is great, but we cannot be arrogant or erratic. Sometimes we are willing to separate or divorce situations or people, like divorce relationships, because there's a strong desire for freedom. And so this can cause issues in relationships, friendship groups, because Uranus is awakening the desire. Uranus is a planet of awakening. So whatever it sits in, that's what it awakens. It's the stabilizing, but sometimes waking things up or stimulating them is unstable. So we are awakening our desire for freedom, awakening a desire for Gemini. So having variety, things not being the same every day, sexual inclinations. So if that's the case, then I want you to be realistic about what it is you actually want and desire, because wholesale change is rarely ever effective. And so sometimes you can throw out things that are actually important or actually that make sense, and then you sitting here looking stupid. Because remember, Gemini can rule loss. So because you switch up things so quickly, you don't have nothing either. Because that's the byproduct. If you don't have a lane and you constantly switching and there's nothing maintained, then what do you have? And I'm open. If someone want to put a comment about it, I'm open. But if you constantly switching and you don't maintain nothing and you don't have nothing, what do you have? Because the last new moon that we had in Taurus is a fixed sign, so that's about maintenance. This is a mutable sign, so it's more about changing and exchanging things, like switching one thing for another, going into far distant places where other people haven't gone. They can be very popular, but like again, if you constantly changing, exchanging things, what do you own? You don't own anything. You're not maintaining anything. So that is why I want everyone to think about, if you are going to do a switch out, what is it that you want to switch out and why? If you're bored, then we have to find mature ways how to deal with negative emotions or just being discontent. Being unhappy is not a crime. Being bored is not a crime. We have, as adults, we have to learn how to manage our emotions. But if it's something more serious, well then now we can start talking about change and exchange. So yeah, there can be a lot of conversations, a lot of intellectual awareness, because the moon is in a Mercurian sign and it's also conjuncting Mercury. But there can also be sensitivity to others. We are more receptive to other people. And so this can sometimes show up as like domestic issues, health issues. And there is like an emotional based thinking now. If this is you, I would really suggest you to avoid major discussions, decisions, as they can be flaky, they can be shifting, because what we think is logical isn't logic. What we think is emotions isn't. So like people trying to rationalize emotions, that's not how that works. Also, people being emotional and think they're speaking facts, that's not a fact. That's your feelings, boo. Which is cool, but like learn to tell the difference. It's harder to do now because again, we're in a lot of Mercurian signs. So we got a lot of Mercury signs. So we got a lot of Gemini. But if you can't tell, give yourself time to think things through. Like, this is how I should feel in theory. Feelings in theory is cute, but that's not how you actually feel. I would say, if you are able to get out of this emotional based thinking and try to stick to facts, you're good. If you can't have a conversation, like, and this is an important conversation, and you have to do paperwork, whatever, and you can't stick to facts, then don't do it. Don't have those big conversations, those talks, none of that. Because you're going to create drama at home. You're going to create drama at work. We can also see this show up with dynamics in women. Sometimes with Mercury with like moon placements, people either get along very well with women, or there's a lot of arguments with women. So this can be a high strong time. People are very excited, and there could be a dislike of convention. There can be a dislike of conformity, and mainly because we're in Gemini. So 8 signs away is Capricorn, and so Capricorn will be the obstacle. The obstacle is monotony. Having to do the same thing every day is an obstacle for Gemini. The status quo is an obstacle for Gemini. The status quo is hard for them. The good thing is we're resourceful, we're determined, but at our worst, they can be almost like a perverseness. And people are very individualistic, but you're better off at solving other people's problems than your own. This is why I'm urging people to please mind your business and focus on yourself. Because we're giving the best advice to others and our life is crashing out. Because we're not living a mindful existence. We're not aware of what we want, how we feel about what we want. There's just this disconnect. And I'm not saying this because all of the planets are making hard aspects. They're not. This is mainly coming from particularly the stars placements, the constellations these things are sitting in, and the obvious square to Saturn and Neptune, which is delusional as F. AF. It's delusional. So what people think they want, what makes sense in the moment isn't making sense. Also in the conjunctions too. What is conjunct? What planets are conjunct and what signs and why? So this, although there's a lot of ease, this still is a trouble in paradise because people have to try to understand the idea of what they want and why. This can also create unusual domestic or family lives. People are moody. I feel like if you need a lot of mental stimulation and you're struggling with monotony, then I would tell you to play some games, try some new routines, go on walks, exercise. That's what I would tell you, to try to give your mind some other forms of stimulation that is intentional versus having like unintentional stimulation and then we're ruining things. We can also get gifts and opportunities at this time. So there can be a lot of success that comes through this placement this month, a lot of accomplishments, optimism, but there is a lack of moderation, which can lead to issues. Try not to be overly ambitious because there's like a hyper need for recognition. Find things that can be stimulating, also practical, and really try to learn. Be open to learning. Do not be stubborn. Okay? Keep your vanity, self-importance in check. This can be good for knowledge traveling. This can be good news from afar, and we can ask people for favors now. You're curious, you're a big thinker. There can be varied interests, but please do not exaggerate because that's not going to help you to get to the bottom of what the issue is or being able to lock in on exactly what you're looking for. It's not the idea that you want things to change or you're interested in a lot of things. But if you just like, okay, I want to shake things up because I want to feel anything, dang, like just anything in life. Okay, that is how people get in trouble. Okay, you just want to feel anything. Okay, so anything can come to you because we're not being intentional. Because we can feel happiness, pain, like you're just kind of like going through the motions at this point. That's all. No, like we be intentional about what you're trying to do. Even if you don't know, except that I don't know what I want or what's kind of going on or what's kind of like pulling me in these directions, but I'm gonna give myself some time to be open or think about what I actually want. Yes, people can be smarter than most, but again, there's a strong thing for anti-intelligence or people trying to reject those type of things. This is good for communication. Again, if we could say factual and disciplined. This is the best if you are a person who can see the big picture in details and then try to broaden your knowledge and be open to new viewpoints. Again, be realistic. I will also say too, do not brag about nothing. I know, like, even if like, okay, even if you're You gonna go something like this, like, oh well, my kids just blah blah blah, or yeah, my boo just got this for me, or I just got a promotion at work. Although this is a good transit for people for work and promotions and like career, I would say not to do that, because there are some placements where it actually makes it frowned upon to brag about yourself or to even talk about yourself, even if you like deserved it or earned something. This is just not it. I wouldn't suggest it. Even if it's like deservingly so. I just like, if something good happened to you, just be quiet. Just be quiet. Just sit on it. Say nothing. And I'm not saying like you should be miserable about it. Like, still be happy, but like, I wouldn't. It's not like a placement where you can talk about casually like something good that happened to you. I wouldn't. um Again, for people who feel like this restlessness or kind of all over the place, there's a strong dislike for restrictions, although there can be a deep respect for information and knowledge at the time, or like you want to learn everything. Anything that's new, you can be very progressive. You may want to study the occult, metaphysics, etc. There's a generosity with friends, travel, unexpected opportunity that we talked about, like you feel like a rising star. But I really would tell people to, like I said, slow down and try to move with common sense. Um, like, just everything that just be upfront is not always what things are. Okay. I would also say like restrictions aren't always bad. For people who are struggling or feel like they are being overwhelmed with restrictions or not being able to do everything that they want to, which is going to be even more hard under the idea of Gemini. But the reality is you can't do everything. You're only a person. So we need to understand what our limits are. That's why I'm encouraging everyone to try to plan, because it makes the most sense and is the most easiest. I also don't want people to feel bad about this placement, because this can be a very fun time, but it also can get people into trouble because they're either having too much fun, no common sense. I just want to be outside to feel something for the sake of feeling something. And it's like, why go through unnecessary pain and struggle? That doesn't make sense to me. And like I talked about, the problem with Gemini is that it's an issue for them to keep things or maintain things, because their natural inclination is to change or exchange things. So whether it's just through communication, anything, buying, shopping, talking, having friendships, or whatever. Sometimes it's sexual, but like my point is like, don't change and exchange things that are like long term are important to you. But you wouldn't know that if you're so busy being overly stimulated, running around in a wild sense of euphoria, wanting to feel something for something, rebelling against restrictions because restrictions are hard and I don't like to be told no. Okay. Okay. We don't have to learn very powerful, painful, potent lessons. And that's my warning to everyone. Yes, y'all can have fun. I want y'all to have fun. I want y'all to be open, experience new things. But listen, Gemini is not for the weak. It's not for the weak. So there's some people that, this is not for the weak. That's all I'm going to say. And I feel like some people are going to be really catching some hard L's, you know. Let's see. If you hear papers, that's my notes. Alrighty. So outside of just having the idea of emotional versatility, which is a pro, being able to improvise conversations, being clever, being skilled, we also have things where we're having revelations and discovery. And right now, Pluto retrograded, I think, at the top of May, or maybe 2 weeks into May. And so Pluto at its best, I know people kind of see Pluto as like destructive and horrible, but no, Pluto can give powerful relationships. It can help with finances, control. It is, it's worse, but like willpower, having self-control. Because it's retrograded, and sometimes it's making a little bit of hard aspects to Lilith right now. We can see stuff where relationship problems can arise, money problems can arise, issues in control, issues with anger. So like everybody fighting their baby mama right now. Everybody trying to get into custody things right now. People fighting their ex-husbands right now. And I'm just kind of like, that's, to me, it feels like the transit, but also the Gemini aspect. Sometimes Gemini has issues getting along with between the genders. Whether it's a man getting along with a woman or a woman getting along with, it doesn't matter which gender they don't get along. They having issues here. But the positive side, even with all of this retrograding issues, like with Pluto and it's scoring Lilith, the interesting part, even with that, it is creating revelation and discovery at its positives. Yeah, it's giving us that. So sometimes we're getting benefits even in certain forms of adversity. So our willpower can be very high, but I want y'all to understand that willpower is a resource, and so it runs out. And so it's best that we don't try to like crush or destroy our willpower or ambition. I know sometimes people live through certain circumstances where it could have crushed their ambition or willpower, but the willpower and ambition can be very high right now. You want to be able to get things done. The drive is high, which is great. Use this time to get your finances together. Use this time for cleaning finances as best as you can, because clearly people got agendas. But you can get recognition. Maybe you're in a leadership role or you're placed into a leadership role. This is good for self-improvement. You maybe can run into powerful people. Because Pluto is regeneration and the sun is vitality, we can see healing, regeneration, which is good because Gemini has some sickly problems as well. We can see people gaining from a loss or legacy. We also see sex or sex appeal because it's Pluto, but because Pluto deals with finances or resources, people can gain from the idea of loss. So again, restriction isn't always bad. We can improve with restrictions. So like if you restrict your time from wasting it doing, I don't know, just running through timelines on social media, and maybe do something productive, we're giving up something to gain something else. If you restrict how much you eat snacks or junk and maybe put into more efforts of just making more well balanced and satiating meals, we may see our health improve. But we had to give up something and put an effort to something else. So I want y'all to think about that. We gain power from loss. We gain power from restriction. So again, like I said, people were like, I don't want to be told now. Can't nobody tell me what to do. Okay, but that's not what's happening. Realistically, we can't have it all. So we have to be adults and understand how to use our willpower effectively and in a potent type of way. And not just in a everything is fun, or for some people this might show up in a sexual way. I'm not trying to shame people for that one, whatever. But you can get more than outside of that. Like you can get a lot of stuff done outside of just that. Okay? So if there is something that you feel like you can improve in yourself, you can get organized, you can shape up, and it'll be easier to put up what you're not interested in. Again, there's some difficulty because people are indulgent now. So once you understand what the limits are and be realistic, it makes it easier to give up things that have to be given up, or being reasonable. Like, I can't do this and this. That's unreasonable. Because we're understanding the idea of maintenance. Because last month in Taurus, we saw what we needed. because it's a fixed sign. So fixed signs tells us what is mandatory, what we need for our survival. Now we're here in Gemini where we talk about what we can change, exchange, what we can get rid of, because it's hard to maintain or multitask in doing all of these things. I can't realistically do that. And so that's how y'all should think. This is good for emotional control. Again, there's some people that may struggle because people's, these are just the transits, so people's charts are different. But I would say maybe people with more feminine placements like earth and water placements may struggle because the most ease is coming out of masculine placements. And I'm saying masculine and feminine in the sense of their behavior, which will be air and fire signs. That would be easier to deal with. Sometimes if you have too much water and earth in your chart, or you predominantly water and earth, or you have placements, this might be difficult for you. If you're a person who has some fire or air placements, that is where you're going to get some ease. Okay? I do see a idea of people being social, but there is this ideal propensity to try to be more selective in socializing. And sometimes people can go into being withdrawn, which can sometimes be alienating. I do see people being more perceptive, almost psychic, and there could be emotional regeneration. So if you're a person who is trying to emotionally get over something, or maybe you're plagued with an experience, this is a good time to kind of delve deep and kind of rectify those things. This is also good to tap into emotional upliftment or emotional empowerment. So that's what I'm trying to tell y'all. Like, look, there's a lot of stuff going on. If you can kind of get over yourself and not kind of be childish a little bit, this can be good for you to physically heal. But also, this can be also really good for emotionally challenging and checking behaviors that may have gone on for too long, or things that we maybe don't understand subconsciously about ourselves. We can kind of like get into better forms of alignment. This is good for home repair. Basically, get your home and work life in order. This is what you should be doing. Let go of things that no longer serve you. If you have old clothes in your closet and it's a part of your closet you don't even touch, when you look at the clothes, there's dust on the shoulder, that can go to somebody else. Of course, wash the dust off like before you donate and stuff, but that can go to someone else. If you have a junk drawer that is like, when you open it, everything jumps out at you, and when you close it, you can't close it, it's time to go through the junk drawer. You don't need that many soy sauces. You don't need that many ketchup packs just in case. They probably expired. Pull your refrigerator out. I'm sure it's dust back there. It's sure it's dust at the top. Like, get your life in order. Get, like, if you sneezing, you don't know why you sneezing, dust your house. Wipe the fan panels. Just go clean up. Go clean up. And y'all think I'm laughing, but this is the most practical way I can tell y'all how to implement this. Go clean up. If you have emotional problems and stuff like that, you still mad at your baby father, your mom, she get on your nerve or whatever, get to the bottom of it and try to move on as much as possible. If you can't, go get a therapist, because this will be the time for you to tap into anything that is holding you back emotionally and spiritually, and you can move on now. Again, go see what your weaknesses are. This also can imply a powerful woman having an impact on you. Now, this could be like your mom, your sister, your friend. But I also say too, this is a transit where you can sometimes experience subtle manipulation, and it's hard to really tell if people being manipulative because they come with a smile. So that's why I say, like, let's stop trying to talk. Let's stop trying to bump up privates and stuff. Let's plan. Let's sit down with a piece of paper or your tablet or your phone or whatever, and let's think about what we want and how we can make it happen. Is it something that we have to release back into the cosmos? Because there's really no way for me to make this happen in a way that makes sense, and I can't really give up anything to make this happen in the moment. Is this something where it's like, oh, I can make this happen, but I really have to understand what I need to give up? Because like, I actually have something for the book tier, the book club tier that I'm actually going to work on. I'm going to end up recording something for them too. Actually, two things. But we need to understand that maybe we're having unrealistic optimism. And that's maybe what I'm speaking to. Unrealistic optimism. And then when you find out that baby your ideas were really like booty, and I don't know where you came up with that or why you thought that, it's giving Santa Claus Easter Bunny shenanigans, then you want to get into informed pessimism. And I want us to be more mature than that. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. But I want us to be more mature than that. Okay? There's, to some extent, when we're starting things or experiencing life, there's going to be uninformed optimism anyway. And then we learn about, okay, that's not really how it was really moving. And I was out of pocket. I thought wrong. But we don't need to jump to total pessimism and despair because we were so out of pocket. Hopefully y'all understand. Like having 2 or 3 things that I needed to learn or was some type of challenge to my goal and I had to like adjust. Okay. Being so off kiltered where I was like delusional and I was even huffing gasoline and sucking on Sharpies. That's past the point. This is where we have to grow up. Okay? People are witty, they're diplomatic. Again, as long as you can get your emotional self, your states in check, you know, people are in a good mood for having conversation. And we can be more analytical now, which is good for making plans. Our comprehension skills should go up. Again, if you can get over the whole anti-intelligentsia thing, rejecting information, being mad that you have to learn, being mad that I have to be clever, I have to be smart. If you can get over that, and you're going to be fine. And it's also like an intelligent form of willpower, and this enables people to have influence over each other. Now this can sometimes show up as competition and bravery, people being demanding, analytical. This can show up as people wanting to teach medicine, research, also proper money management. But what we really are seeing, or really how it articulates, is being able to see beyond the obvious, and people are able to study. I would say too, but don't try not to get too obsessive, which is very easy to do with a new moon and Pluto wrapped up into this mess. But you can be able to read between the lines, to listen to what is implied. You know, but I really, like I said, try to keep an open mind when doing that. Because if you're so locked in, like we were talking about earlier, if you're so locked into your opinion and your ego is so attached to these ideas and your opinion, you're not going to be open to the idea of reading between what wasn't said, what was implied. So that's something to consider. Because Uranus is also making a positive aspect to Pluto, we can see a spiritual awakening. Pluto does have spiritual or psychological aspects. And again, we talked about earlier, Uranus is the awakener. It can awaken things. So we see spiritual awakenings. We see psychological or subconscious awakenings. And this can either build people up or separate them. So this is about endurance, strength, accepting the newness of life. People can be altruistic, but there can be issues. People can be angered by the idea of injustice, dictators, and idealism. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to make a whole separate thing for the outer planets, because we only got one more planet to lock in to this new little outer planet situation. And that's Uranus. And so we're getting closer and closer to seeing what these new planets, with Pluto being forever into Aquarius for the next 20 years. Saturn and Neptune had just recently went into Aries, these last few days, like Neptune, I think, was last month, and Saturn just went into it like a day or two ago. Uranus is last one. So this summer, we're really going to see what the tea is with how things are moving. And I'm going to make a whole separate audio on that one. That might just have to just, in my personal opinion, it might just have to go up on Patreon because of the nature of what I'll be talking about. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. That the nature of what we had to talk about. And if y'all remember the audio that I had cut on Trump's bullet situation, that's gonna go on Patreon. Okay, that's not for YouTube. And I will, if I cut anything on what I'm looking at or talk about anything that I'm looking at, that's gonna go over there. So people are open to new ideas and new experiences, and this will really, like, if you really want to be like dig really deep into where you're open to these new ideas and new experiences, is going to be where you have Aquarius and where you have Scorpio in your placements. So prime example, if you're a Gemini person with Gemini in the top, like Gemini rising, Gemini sun, etc., where you have Scorpio is 6 signs away. Where you have Aquarius is 9 signs away. So where we're open to change in different things is like daily routines, is we want to switch them up. Health regimens, you want to switch them up. What you read for religion, for philosophy, religion, or just reading in general, you just want to be different. Maybe you want to travel. Getting into like metaphysics, etc., because both of these planets have like spiritual connotations, Uranus and Pluto. So this can also awaken the idea of spirituality and metaphysics or subconscious changing in people. So I find that very, very interesting. But wherever you have it, so like if you're a Libra rising, you're a Libra person, you'll have Aquarius in the 5th house, Scorpio in a second. So like changing your voice, changes in immediate family, changes in personal finances, changes in your values, changes in romance, creativity, changes with your children, etc. But again, that's going to be a whole separate thing. But people can be more exuberant and wanting to explore the potentials of either themselves and others. This can either be through organizational skills, business, education, politics, and being really interested in everything. This can be endless possibilities. You can achieve a lot with a minimum effort. But again, learn your limits, because you're achieving things or doing things so quickly, and you can get a lot done in a short amount of time. That means when you F up, you can get a lot of BS done in a short amount of time too. Because if the pro, if one side of the coin is accurate, so is the other. Like if the pro is what it is, and so is the con. So like if I can get a lot of positivity or like things that I want done, like productivity, in a short amount of time, like if I'm like bullshitting, then that means I can get a lot of things that I don't want to happen in a short amount of time. The inverse is true. So that's just up to for all my people, because I know there's going to be like a strong little segment that's like very hard-headed and tough. You got a tough forehead and it got a harder behind, but you know, the hard head makes for a soft behind, you know. And what's the other saying? What you don't listen to, you want to have to learn. What you don't hear, you feel, or something like that to that effect. Listen, it's giving that. This can be good for legal issues, or like having to sort out legalities. Your finances can benefit. This can give you high confidence, strong self-belief. Again, overall good for like education, travel, and leadership. Emphasis on education. Like, please, y'all, like, I'm not saying you have to go learn in a classroom, but like just pay attention to what's happening. Like, really center knowledge, like understanding. And a lot of this will not be touching you. A lot of the nonsense, a lot of the heartbreak, people crying, struggle, people getting sick, all of the like really like lock in. There could be a strong work ethic and high productivity now. And this is great for potential career gains. So anything you start now and you are diligent with, it'll positively impact your future. You just have to put in the work. And that's a bit hard to do because, again, Gemini makes weird aspects to Saturn, particularly Capricorn. It's positive for Aquarius, but Aquarius doesn't value the old.